Okay, so we'll read the hearing notice and then we'll open the hearing. So in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 15, notice is hereby given that the Bolton Zoning Board of Appeals is holding a continuation of the public hearing on Monday, September 17th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Board of Selectmen's room of Town Hall, 663 Main Street, Bolton, Mass. To hear and act upon an appeal filed by Diego Vieira as a person aggrieved by the building inspector's determination that, quote, the storage of auto parts is not a customary home occupation under Section 250-21, accessory uses of the Bolton zoning code, and Section 250-11, mixed uses does not allow for the use of commercial building in the residential district for property located at 423 Harvard Road, Bolton, Mass, and shown on Assessors Map 7.C, parcel 63D. Okay, well, we're open for business.
So I'm Christopher Yates from Fletcher Clayton over in Hudson for the homeowners, and I believe we're in our fourth meeting, I think. So after the site visit, there were some recommendations from the town. I believe it's from the fire department. Heat detectors placed in the storage area, smoke detectors in the office or finished area of the building, adequate fire extinguishers based upon forklift and storage, propane storage outside of the building protected by a cage. Believe that that was all done prior to the last meeting.
Everything but the cage, still waiting for that to come in.
You ordered it?
Yeah, hold on. Couldn't find a cage store anywhere.
So we have no problem finishing that list.
So, just for a point of record, so at our last meeting, we continued to tonight because one of our
Correct.
members was not present.
We chose, yes.
Yeah, right, and so, but our member's here tonight, and he did review, get up to speed on what conspired, which wasn't a lot, with that meeting, so transpired.
Yeah, we didn't
so,
conspire.
right, right, so that, we have a full board tonight. So any questions about in general, the application and subsequent sidewalks and observations on the operation? Questions, comments, or observations, or anything that, as far as if you want any dialogue on it, before we would, either entertain a motion or close it, then entertain a motion and vote on it, recap necessary.
I don't think so.
So, we want a motion to close the public hearing portion, and then we can do a motion on whether to uphold the building inspector's decision or alternatively to not uphold it and
Yeah.
create it.
So if there's no need for any additional information,
Right.
close the hearing and
Is there
then-
any other input? Does anybody have any other input?
No, the only other input we've had, we had, I haven't seen anything new, is that correct?
Nothing
So,
new has
so
been
the last
submitted.
things we had a couple of others, different ways,
Yeah.
or one may not have been a butter,
Right.
but a resident, but nonetheless, so I think we're all aware of that. The fire department, sent in their comments.
Right.
Chris just responded to and whatnot. And,
Right.
so that, so now we've, that's, to my best knowledge, that's the sum and total of what's been provided.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I would just recommend before the board make a decision to deliberate on what the findings would be in
Mhm.
order for you to make that decision.
Mhm. Correct.
Before you close, can I just
Sure.
say a couple more things?
Oh, certainly, yes, yeah, that's right, I was just getting feel from the board, but certainly,
Yep, so I believe we've only had one resident or neighbor with any concerns. And the last time we were here, we had a neighbor here in favor.
That's right.
I think we had about a 2-hour meeting the first time, hour and a half to 2 hours. We went through all the facts, but just to recap the bylaw itself, our position the four-prong test that it is a home occupation conducted by a resident of the premises, that it is incidental, which we are in the barn, not the home. No more than 2 persons other than the residents of the dwelling, and not a total of more than 4 are employed. We're well under that. And then as far as noise, vibration, dust, heat, odors, glare, traffic congestion, we went over that all the first night and addressed any concerns as far as neighbors were concerned. We're willing to limit any deliveries as needed.
How procedurally would that work? Because you're looking at the storage within the facility, and then the dialogue of how the turnover, so it looks like there's a lot of storage. It was like, well, it's temporary and then it turned over very fast, but that would be
The only-
indicative of a lot of, it only turns over if you have trucks.
The concern, I believe, was there was sometimes deliveries with larger trucks, and I think we said we could limit that
Containers, yeah.
to quarterly.
Yeah, there was definitely, there was a little bit of confusion last time, where I assumed every 40-foot container that showed up that's where I said quarterly. But we've had many 40-foot containers stop by to deliver furniture, all that stuff, so quarterly number's probably off by a bit, like 5 or 6 a year. You can try to limit, but.
Right, so, I mean, I don't, well, you can try. That's the slippery for me as far as it's, when they talk about the incidental in nature or the customary, and some of the dialogue around that, it's more like it's limited to, you would think FedEx or smaller trucks and things like that and shipments, and clearly in the time frame from when this sort of came in, under our purview, there was, even on a personal level driving to work, there were times where, and it wasn't a furniture, I could tell being delivered to, like,
No,
see a
of course,
product
yeah.
out there
Yeah.
in trucks back and so it's hard for us to,
I can change the time, whatever truck would possibly come. I can change how many come, I can change how long it's there for.
Can we limit it to 6 times would be once every other month? Is that, I'm talking about those types of trucks that.
Yeah, that wouldn't be an issue.
So,
I would think
Is
the
it-
winter would be the major concern with, high snow banks and that sort of thing.
I don't think I'll still
Public
be in that
safety
building in
thing.
winter, to be honest.
so question, is the river, do you have a facility in Hudson as well?
No, it used to be, that was our facility before we moved into this one.
Okay, so River Road, is that the,
Dave's Landscaping?
No, I mean, I saw reference to the whatever our business acronym, SR. Yeah, so when I was looking just to get more information, there was a site linked to a River Road property that had storage of this type of equipment. So
Yeah,
I was like, okay, is this over, just to know what the
No, we haven't
relationship
been there
was
in
there.
3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been-
So that was an on-site storage, the equivalent of the, whatever
Yeah, we
the
have-
repurposing
yeah.
that we're doing there, in a, was that a commercial residential? I mean, commercial zoned area, okay, so I didn't know if the material here is just temporary or whether there's room there, if it was the same business.
Oh, no, we don't have
Shift it
space there anymore.
Okay. Mhm.
Sure, do you want to open it for any last minute public comment? I don't know, we do have someone else in the audience, I don't know if they're here to comment or not. Okay.
Here for the fun.
I believe she mentioned that she was here for.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed
Still,
that.
no, but yeah, just in our general conversation as
Oh.
people were coming in.
Oh, okay.
right. So, there was a little confusion because I was working from an old agenda. So I was
Okay.
trying to say, oh, no, come back next week. So,
I guess my concern is I'm right on the border of saying this isn't good. So if this business becomes any more intense, I think,
It's, I don't think you'll see that happen.
it can't get any more intense due to the space
Right.
limitation.
Yeah.
We're
So-
all aware of where we need to
Right,
be and not go any further.
so,
So is the plan to expand into a different facility?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Get my
Do you have
house
the
back.
timeline for that, or,
Within a year or so,
Yeah,
okay,
to be fair, yeah, that's more than fair, I think.
possibly sooner.
okay. Yeah. I'm just wondering about the limiting the trucks, because that seems like,
That was a big,
yeah, and, you know, we've got several abutters writing in saying
I
it's
agree.
happening a lot, and,
yeah,
You know, when I
So-
first moved in there, I never anticipated having a container sitting next to my house.
right,
Wasn't the
yeah.
game
So,
plan.
but, yeah, but that's some, I mean, for me, thinking about it, you know, shows again, we're trying to, from a board, look at the bylaws and say, okay, does it fit what would be customary, you know, incidental in nature, or incidental, or secondary, but maybe at the starting point, or it hadn't grown to where it is, and then with the, so you mentioned that, yeah, it's almost outgrown, and there's more of a business, because you wouldn't be home occupying somewhere else with this scale, I think. But again, that's,
I mean, there was a lot of discussion the first night about like a landscaper's yard. You know, I think that we're less intrusive than that, quite honestly. With equipment, everything's inside.
right, so the visibility.
We're not really doing any work there. Like if somebody were shipping
Mhm.
and receiving clothes, or clothing,
Yeah.
people do that these days,
Mhm.
and storing them in their house. You know, you have the same kind of.
Yeah, right, and that's possible, I haven't seen, I mean, I just, as the availability to buy, sell online, things like that happen, you know, but personally, I've never seen the scope of what, say, storage, like if someone's buying clothes, I mean, that would almost be like, you go into a men's warehouse type of, you know, the scope of the racks and whatnot, that, it would seem like,
I've dealt with people before that have
yeah.
gotten into the business of shipping and buying and selling clothes and things like that, and they keep it all in their house, like rooms get dedicated to it. And
I think that one of the things, what's happened here is obviously there were people that complained about the trucks, right? So then
Yeah.
sent the building inspector out, who then deemed it, you know, not a residential use, right? So obviously in the beginning, when it was a smaller operation, it's a good thing that it's getting bigger for you, right, obviously. So I think it, because of its scale and then the size, people have, obviously there's abutters that aren't happy with what's
Yeah,
going
the
on.
points here.
And so that's why we as a board have to look at, you know, do we, by looking at our bylaws, is this something that we think is a customary, you know, residential or home office, right, in a residential zone?
That's the sticking point I have, is that from the site walk, I found this property very reminiscent of the back room in a Home Depot. And I've worked in several Home Depots. And to me, that sort of usage is not a customary home occupation. So that's kind of my mindset on the whole thing.
Even to, sort of the permitted use, that type of, you know, storage of that type of, you know, it's a difficult because of I think the scope, for me, it just seemed like it was,
yeah, no, the scale is there. I look at home occupations as some, you know, the cottage industry type thing, you know. Little mom and pop operation that's using the house as a base, but.
or even the garage, we've seen the
That's what it
garage.
was.
Yeah.
That, right, the operative where Baben was, that's what it was, but, you know,
Yeah.
it's scaled into something that, you know, in some, your, you know, your economics, it's great that you're thriving.
There's no way we can put this thing, to come back in a year and review it, obviously, but, you know, I don't know, that's, I'm looking for some way of time testing it, and I don't think there's any path I can think of to do that.
Well, I don't think you'll see us get any more, the scale will not get larger here. it will only get smaller, I would say.
Yeah, now it's moving stuff out, not in. You still see container.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, my thought is that we have to make our decision based on what is and not what might be down the road, as far as the building inspector's determination was based on the business or the asserted occupation at that time, and then what we've seen at that time and then subsequent. And I guess if there's a belief that it is a home occupation permitted and it can be conditioned, then that's one thing, but if
We don't mind being
if there's-
conditioned
no,
and
no.
living within those
Mhm.
conditions,
Right,
whatever you
right.
choose them to be, we can.
Right, I get, so those are the two things. It's hard for me to envision, again, that's one person, one board member, trying to make a decision on the future, like, 6 months from now may not be what it is now, so let's put my vote toward okay, because down the road they say, but if economics change or situation change, the economy change, it may persist longer, and then where are we then? So.
I simply don't have enough space to store.
Right.
If you were to, limit the amount of square footage of the barn or something like that, we would be okay with that, because we would be able to live within that and then scale down to get there.
Mhm.
Something that you're comfortable with.
Right.
What would you propose for the square footage?
What's the square footage of the garage?
It's 2,800, I think.
That's what I said earlier.
72 by 40. 2880.
I mean, I think if you were to condition us on using whatever number you decide on, and giving us a little bit of time to get it down to that number, as far as space we're being used for the home occupation, I think we could do that pretty easily.
Is there a way that if your operation is growing, and assuming you're probably gonna have to find a different, whether you stay there or not doing work out of there, you're gonna have to find a different distribution facility?
Without a doubt, yeah.
Is there a way that there can be no tractor trailers going there?
Yeah, that wasn't the long-term goal to have these trucks come out of the house, but if I do work out of the garage, it's more of gonna be engineering work, it's gonna be,
What would be a percentage of that barn you could,
I would need more than 50% maybe.
so if you were to limit to half and give us a little bit of time to get down to that number, we could do that if we had a 3 or 6 month window to get the use down to what your limit is to be comfortable with. We're fine with that.
Yeah,
I can
just
make-
as a discussion amongst the group, because I don't have the answer. Then do we run the risk of allowing a use that otherwise, if we're saying, if I'm thinking about it, if I believe for an assumption that it isn't a home occupation, but we say allow that permitted use or that non-permitted use to go for months, and then work down to something that maybe is a home occupation.
We believe and have argued that it is a home occupation use, so you'd have to buy into that. But
Right.
to make the board comfortable, we'd limit the size of the space. So you're talking about, how big is the house?
House is around 4,000 square feet.
So you're talking about a 4,000 square foot house, a 2,800 square foot garage, which we would use half of. So you're talking about 1,400 square feet out of usable space of 6,800 as a gauge anyway. That's less than a quarter of the total space.
I'm not sure that changes whether it's a customary home occupation.
Correct,
If it's
yeah.
not a customary home occupation at 2,800 square feet, it's
not gonna
Not
be
any, not any
Yeah.
more of a customary home occupation if you cut it down to 1,400 or 2,000 or something.
Well-
To me, either it is or it isn't.
Well, that,
Customer.
and that's, so I'm saying, if I go 6 months out and say that it's gonna be something different, again, we're trying to decide on what it is presently, not what it
Right.
is to be in the
Right.
future. And if whatever the current thought of the individuals who voted on it is, you know, if we think it's a customary home occupation, but it's on the cusp of something different, and we can limit it versus, we don't think it's a customary home occupation, it doesn't really make sense trying to limit it, because it's, we would believe that it's not customary or not incidental. Certainly in the four prong, there are some prongs that, you know, are clear, because it's not a high, you know, employee required type of business, you know, so it doesn't have that thresholds easily met, or, you know.
I believe that it is, and I don't think we would even be here before you if it was something else, if it was clothing, if it was, you know, something that was, I think the type of product that it is, even though there's no real work going on there, I think is what prompted them to send us to you.
But,
I don't
you
know
know,
if
I
I
don't know.
agree with that, unfortunately. First of all, I applaud everything that you guys are doing, and I think it's great that you're able to run a business like that. But I think the real issue came down to the fact that people were concerned more with the trucks and so that would have happened at that scale, whether it
Oh,
was,
pallets, trucks.
whether it
there's
was,
a whole host of
right,
things that are.
car
mentioned in the
parts
record.
or
Yeah,
clothing
right,
or
yeah.
whatnot, right? So,
Boxes.
and I agree that the house, you know, the lot looks great. I think, you know, the structure looks beautiful, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you know, but it's done some, you know, that argument unfortunately doesn't help this board when we're looking at whether it's a customary use, because, you know, you may see tractors and trailers and trucks at a landscape business that are more unsightly, but they don't cause as much damage, I think, to the neighbors in this scenario, because there's not, you know, trucks going in and out, right? So,
I would argue a contractor's yard or a
Yeah.
landscaper, you know, that's daily trucks in and out, you know, multiple times, multiple trucks. I think that's more intrusive on a neighborhood, quite honestly, but.
Mhm.
if they're doing work there, yeah, if they're,
Right.
you know, pulling out
Yeah.
putting it
But even
together.
we've had, I mean, not, again, we're in fact looking at what's here, but I have seen on others where they, you know, the landscaper then got storage somewhere else for their vehicles, and so they may have had their home occupation, you know, taking orders, scheduling who they're gonna service, but their large equipment and whatnot, but for maybe a pickup truck with a, you know, potentially a lawnmower or something, other things were at a garage, or where, I'm not sure what the right term is, you know, but it was off-site, so that, you know, there's been ways that, yeah. But again, we can probably think of a lot of different situations,
Right.
but I get your point. Mhm. Certainly, there are ways to push limits on all you know, processes.
So like I said before, we're willing to limit
Mhm. Yeah.
traffic, truck traffic as much as you want.
Yeah, I mean, if I can remove the DHL daily pickup, I don't really use them anymore. I can limit trailers being brought in, but I'd have to do that 2 months from now, because they're already on a boat headed this way.
Right. Mhm.
I mean, as far as DHL is concerned, like, I think you can do that on your own, but I'm not sure
Mhm.
anybody can have DHL come to their house
No,
every
right,
day.
yeah, right,
you know?
even, that's right, you know, because everyone has. the
FedEx could come to
incidental-
somebody's house every
right,
day.
Right, they come
Right.
and deliver it,
Yeah.
you know, but, I think the scope and the magnitude of the, say, the product being delivered, may have been, you know, is one of the factors certainly
Mhm.
that plays into it, but it's hard to envision it. You know, if you limit it or you cut it down, then, you know, then we're putting someone at an adverse economic situation when they say the board, you know, made us too narrow, and I'm not making my livelihood, I don't know, you know. So any other comments or suggestions or whatever, so that we can decide, assuming the board is either heard or has no questions, follow.
So in terms of appearance, I've driven by a bunch of times and, there's that fence with, where the pallets can go,
Mhm.
and the pallets weren't behind the fence, everything's out in front.
Yeah, that was the
So-
past maybe week.
Yeah, so I think that, that's one of the red flags, I think, that sets the neighbors off, it's like the appearance of the building, doors are up, there's a, tow motor, going around, there's a truck out front, it's back, just the appearance of it, kind of sets people's, it sets off the alarms.
Yeah, for some, it's Scully Haskell, others have said, doesn't really bother them. I mean,
Right,
but,
right.
but.
Yeah, I'm not
So
sure
those
if
factors
it's
are
bothering
important,
neighbors.
it's the first to think of, but then we have to,
So
at
I'm
the end
looking
of the
for
day,
it.
have to look at is,
I think we had the logistically closest neighbor here at one of the meetings, and they were not bothered by it.
right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so, so if you said, not your piece, but so very clear, okay, so then, and any questions for the applicant based on, what's been said or, so. So at this point, motion to close the public hearing portion?
Second, I'll make a motion
Okay.
to close the public hearing.
Okay, and then seconded by?
Second.
By Brian? Okay. So, I think part of, our responsibility is, when we get ready to vote is to be sure we have whatever fact patterns or findings that will come to play based into our decision. So I think some of it's been discussed tonight, as far as the scale, the operation, the appearance. I mean, clearly, the 4 prongs have all been discussed, and for me, 2 of them are less a slam as being meeting the conditions. One, the customary and clearly incidental and secondarily, customary home occupation. Some of the verbiage, like you can't just strip out some of those words like, incidental, or, they're clearly in the customary, so the vehicle deliveries and things like that, the size of the racks and all the equipment in there, to me, would lead me in a potential decision to think it's outgrown, if it was a home occupation, even if it was. That's my thoughts.
I don't think we actually voted to close it.
Yeah, we did do a motion. Oh,
Do a motion.
oh, second, sorry, my bad. It's all in favor of the motion to close?
Aye.
Aye, okay, so.
Just-
No, good point, I
Waited that long.
Yeah. We'll
I
see
don't want to
you all-
interrupt us.
No, but okay.
Yeah, we'll see you all back here next month, yeah. Point of order.
Thank you for that, Andy.
Yeah, thanks.
So having said what I just said, that my, sort of read through the, and, trying to condition something that I'm not sure where it'll be down the road, it's kind of hard for me.
I mean, what kind of safeguards will we put in place for those conditions? We need some sort of validation or some sort of follow-up at a certain time. Who's gonna take on that piece of it?
Well, typically it isn't the board,
Right.
if we don't, whether it be the building inspector, or, sometimes it's then the residents, sometimes they're the people that see things, and then it's up to us, but, you know, so I don't, you know,
Yeah.
it's hard to say who would be that body, you know?
Right.
It's not like with some places you have a homeowners association or you have something where then they're the gatekeepers, but, you know.
Word of somebody who already doesn't want me to operate the business isn't gonna be as valid as like a building inspector coming in.
I think it's the building inspector as the enforcement officer.
Well, it clearly is, but, you know, how routinely they then have to, you know, monitor, go out, you know, or if it's based on if somebody complains to the building inspector. And that's what prompts a follow-up, but.
Right, exactly.
I think that will be the tripwire
Yeah.
here. I mean, if 2 months from now, the building inspector gets a bunch of frantic calls, and it's gonna be right back here again, so, you know.
In addition to, I mean, if.
I mean, what we're voting on is whether or not the building inspector was right in his decision
Correct.
to overturn it. But that doesn't mean he can't come back in next week and say, you know.
Potentially, I guess, right, unless,
I mean, you did originally tell me I could build a barn and use it for that purpose.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the reality of it. He is a building official and has the right to administer zoning laws,
right.
so he could shut it down again. I mean, this is,
Yeah, because as I say, looking at the information provided, you know, would be the storage and the, you know, what wasn't there before to be what was there when he was alerted to conditions, and, you know, that dramatically altered his, you know, from the meeting notes, his opinion of what was there as, you know, not being a home occupation. So, you know, the fact that you have a structure and it was potentially to be used incidental for some purpose, as a home occupation, and, you know, and a single resident running it, not, you know, so yes, probably could say, yeah, that what you're thinking of doing, falls in line with what a home occupation is, but clearly that changed, you know, in the building inspector's mind, such that, you know, he had to issue his opinion on whether or not it was in fact a home occupation. So,
I mean, the board could certainly request that the building inspector go out in 2 or 3 months, ensure that, you know, if there's a decision written with conditions, that those conditions are being followed. I mean, certainly, I'm sure the building inspector would do inspections on behalf of the board, you know.
Right.
We'd be fine with that.
Just random, you know, drive by, see what's going on.
I'll give him a key.
Because obviously he would be reviewing it under the new conditions set within the decision, not just the bylaw, so.
So that would be if a vote was made to
Overturn his
overturn it
decision.
and with the condition
Correct.
versus to uphold it.
Correct.
well, would that be to uphold it in a reduced form, or what would, you know, just,
If we uphold if we uphold his decision, it's based on the current operations, and we would be finding that we don't believe we would believe that his determination that it does not meet home occupation is valid. If
okay,
we-
so that would be.
I think the alternative is if we think that there's room for interpretation, or for, if it were to change in scope, then that would be a different vote to overturn it with conditions, you know. But
Well, I mean,
we still have
but
to
if we're
be
saying-
sure that
if
we
we're
have
saying
still
that
to say whether it's a home occupation or not.
right, I mean, if we uphold what he said right now,
Mhm.
that doesn't really speak to what happens if it's scaled back in the future.
Right.
Because we can uphold it right now and then say, oh, but if you did this and this and this, then it would qualify. So that seems like it would kind of be a backwards, kind of backing into it.
I think that
Does
would
that
be
make sense?
difficult for the building inspector as well,
Yeah.
because he would need those parameters set within a decision for him
Right.
to say, okay, I have these parameters now, I can now
Right,
evaluate your business based on that.
right,
If you uphold it, then he only has the bylaw to really go on.
right.
Yeah, the bylaw isn't a lot of help.
No, it's not, it's vague, yeah.
But
Odd
it's what-
suggestion.
Yeah.
No,
No good
no.
suggestion?
I was calling it a by suggestion.
Oh,
versus by law.
yeah. But that's what we have.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
what we, you know, and that's what the building inspectors use to make a determination. And then we, so, so does anyone have a motion to entertain, one way or the other? Gets us started down the development process.
I mean, I don't know, as it is today, I don't believe that it's a home occupation. So, I guess the motion would be to uphold the building inspector's determination that it was not a home occupation.
So, I mean, if that, if you want to make that motion, because that would be one motion, you know, then make that, then we can see if we have a second, and we can go from that perspective.
All right, so I make a motion to uphold building inspector's determination that is not a home occupation.
Second.
Okay, so, motion and seconded by Brad, and this time,
Yep.
all in favor of the motion to...
Before you confirm that, did you want to list your findings as to why you made that decision? Because I'll need that for the actual writing of the decision.
In my opinion, the use as a warehouse is not a customary home occupation. That's the one criteria I would want to
Mhm.
say.
Yeah, right, and I'm looking at it, I've given a lot of thought to the, you know, the terminology, whether it's clearly incidental and secondary in nature, and also whether it's customary. I'm not sure if customary's been redefined
Yeah,
yet
well,
to.
that's just like to resolve right there.
Well, maybe, but again, it's customary is what is common, and it is, even as the building inspector, you know, and as people talk to first hearings, you know, we've seen legal offices, you know, artists, you know, but everything was on a scope and a scale of, you know, much more traditional types of delivery mechanisms, whether, you know, everyone's with the ad hoc FedEx or UPS or, you know, deliveries, you know, those trucks are usually small, they come, they drop something, and, you know, people use maybe a few file cabinets if they're in our office, or if they may store something in a garage, but again, incidental type of quantity or product, you know, this, you know, once you put behind the doors and saw the scope of it, so. So those are the two things I sort of struggle with, but, and then, you know, although the applicant clearly has tried to mitigate some of them, you know, initially what we saw was, you know, stacks and stacks, everything really high of pallets out the front. We saw storage of, you know, significant quantity of cardboard. I mean, so there was things that went toward the detrimental aspect in the neighborhood, but, and, you know, over time, based on observations of commons, there's been an effort to clean it up, but clearly there's still some of the presence of the pallets are consistent. Again, the delivery trucks, while there's potentially a commitment to reduce it, it isn't what we've seen, sort of. So, you know, I'm dealing with the current and not the future in some respect, and for what we could envision. So some of those, so that again, that factor of that fourth prong, I can see it's sort of, it's been not as clearly sort of a well-done process by the applicant versus it has, to me, had some detriment to the neighborhood, into the town type of view of what the town would expect.
Yeah, I think it just is at the point where it's right on the edge of, you know, if it were a much smaller operation, then I would probably be, you know, tempted to say it was a home occupation, but it's definitely gonna move anyway, so. It's, you know, which is good success, but, you know, it just doesn't fit the model.
Does this decision require a simple majority, or is it super majority?
Super.
So the way it's structured, 4 people would have to vote to uphold, in order to uphold.
Mhm.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's think about that. Is it 4 to uphold or 4 to overturn?
Yeah, that's why, 'cause it's-
4 overturn.
Override, I
So it would be
I thought it was
overturn.
4 to
Right,
overturn,
right,
but-
correct.
Mhm.
It would be 4 to overturn.
Right now. the
But it's a
building
simple
inspector-
majority then to uphold. The way it's structured is, the motion is to uphold, so.
Correct. You'd be right then.
Okay, so, some of us have sort of given what we think would be the findings, but is that, anyone else, anything else that you?
So do you want me to just sort of read back what I have for notes, just?
Sure.
And I think also the board can, you are meeting next Monday, so we can finalize the decision then as well, I believe. You had to vote tonight to meet the 100-day deadline, which you have, or you will have
Right.
done. And then I can draft the decision based on these findings, and then you can review it.
Because we have so many days to
Right,
issue the
14
decision.
days, and to get it to the town clerk. So, so with that said,
Okay.
so the first one was that it's a warehouse use and not a home occupation,
Not customary.
not a customary home occupation. Along that vein, do you want me to mention the form of intent? Because the form of intent that was submitted to the town does describe it as a warehouse use. Do you want that as part of the backing for that finding? I'm just trying to add some meat to the bone here.
Okay. So, in the permitted
So
there's a
the
table.
schedule of
the
permitted
schedule of
uses,
permitted
warehouses
uses
would not be allowed,
in a-
correct?
Right, so that's the
So add
table
that.
but for the fact of going out and observing what it really was, that's, seems to then say to us, or to me, that, well, this is more of a, rather than in-store use within a barn or a garage or a structure, to be a warehouse in nature.
And the warehouse nature was confirmed based on a site visit.
Mhm.
We have to vote.
So we're just reviewing what she has for findings.
And then one of the other things that Mike had stated in his cease and desist order was the fact that if it is considered a warehouse use, he then mentions another section of the bylaw that talks about mixed uses and how you can't have a residential use and a commercial use on the
Within
same
a residential
property.
Mhm.
Is that something the board wants to mention, or?
Um, Well, it would continue to go toward corroborating. If we say it's not home occupation and it's warehouse use, then it would seem like then if it's a warehouse use and it's in the residential neighborhood, it's not permitted, so.
So then we're kind of covered there, you're saying?
Right.
Okay, so we're covered there.
At least in my mind, but yeah,
Yep.
I'm only speaking for.
What document are you referring to that?
So the building inspector cease and desist, and it can be found within.
The April 9th letter?
The appeal. No, it's a subsequent letter that's in
Right.
the appeal from the attorney's office.
June 12th?
Yes, I think it's,
Our letter's June 12th.
I see April 26th.
yep, that's it. So in the second paragraph there, he mentions that.
It also mentions that bulk storage is not allowed under residential use.
And then we try to define bulk to the well.
I'm a little gray on that because, so is the building inspector saying that if it's deemed a commercial activity, storage of auto parts, then that makes the building itself a commercial building?
No, he's talking about the use. So if you look at the section of that bylaw that's called mixed uses, it basically says you cannot have mixed use on a property. So.
Right, but his line says, section 250-11, mixed uses does not allow the use of a commercial building in the residential district.
Yeah.
And then the next line talks about commercial activity. I didn't know if that's something,
So he's saying with the commercial activity, it makes the building a commercial.
that's what I'm asking, is
Right. If you deem it as a warehouse and it's commercial in nature, then it's, I think.
Yeah, that language comes directly from the bylaw, the use of a commercial building.
yeah, it's a little confusing because they could cease what they're doing now and it would still be defined as a commercial building because it had been used previously for,
But then I don't know if that's what, I don't know if that's what
So
Mike
subdivide
meant,
itself.
honestly. I think he was referencing more just the
The mixed use
commercial
is what I
activity
think we're-
piece of it.
Right.
And, but, I don't wanna speak on his behalf, but that's just a little confusing, I think.
that's my reservation, to add that to what, our supporting documentation here is. I'm not really clear on
Sure.
whether it's a commercial building just because we're stating that it's non-customary home occupation doesn't, to me, necessarily make that next step that it's a commercial building. I don't know.
Well, it's a commercial building code, and then there's a use. Those are two different issues. You know, you have to build a commercial building to a certain building code, which are different than.
Yeah, and his line talks about the use of a commercial building, and
So a commercial building is built for that purpose.
Right, so he says, the storage of auto parts is, in his opinion, is a commercial activity and therefore not allowed in the residential district.
which I would agree with that
Right, so
second
that
line,
second line,
but I'm not sure how that really
Mhm.
ties back to the first line.
Right. Mhm.
So does the board want me to just add that residential use and commercial use cannot be conducted on the same, in the residential district?
People can't work out of their home offices.
Home office is not deemed to be commercial.
Alright.
That's the whole point, is it's
Right.
not, home office is a customary home occupation, but
I think we're covered under that, under that finding then. I will not put anything in there about mixed use. And then the second finding was that it was incidental in nature, and not customary based on the appearance when the doors were open. You could see the scope of the warehouse, the stacks of pallets outside. Did you wanna mention anything about the delivery trucks?
Yeah, in the.
And containers.
Right.
So the containers parked outside?
Mm.
And then you said also that the stacks of pallets, and I assume the delivery trucks would also fall in line with, the notion that it's detrimental to the neighborhood or unsightly to the neighborhood.
Well, and even for, initially, I was looking at detriment could also be safety and, 5, 6 feet of pallets at the edge of a driveway. I mean, again, some of that
Well, I
stuff.
stopped doing that,
You know, well, right, I mean, so, in there, but that, you know, topple, some of those were all part of the, you know, what could be considered detrimental, to, you know, in my mind.
And can I also use the word nuisance from the bylaw, or under that, the unsightly is detrimental? I'm just reading back, or going back.
What term did you refer to?
Nuisance, just, I think it's in the home occupation
mhm.
bylaw.
In my opinion, the trucks would be the only thing that would be a nuisance. It's not everything else.
Yeah.
So essentially, the business isn't meeting requirement for under the home occupation bylaw. Correct? Is that what we're saying? Or the board is saying? No noise, vibration, dust, heat.
Right. I believe that's not fully met.
Okay.
From my, you know, we haven't voted on it, but that would be my. All right, so do you think you have your meat that you work with?
I think so, I think I have enough, yeah.
Okay, unless anyone else has it. So we have a motion, it's been seconded. All in favor of the motion to uphold the building inspector's decision? That's the motion, correct? Yes, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So the motion to uphold the building inspector's
Unanimous?
unanimous.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yep, thank you.
So in preparation for the meeting, I had written up the signature page for the decision either way,
Right.
depending on
Right.
how the board would weigh in. So if you don't mind signing that.
Yeah, so if we come back to the hearing, you're gonna have notes, should we?
Yes, I'll have a
sign it then?
draft.
Or should we do it now? But it doesn't matter to me,
It doesn't matter to me either, actually, if you want to sign it then. I just figured since tonight was the night that you made the decision.
Okay. Yeah, as long as it doesn't, we review, as long as we review what's written, that goes with those signatures before it's actually given to
Oh,
someone.
definitely, yeah, I mean, of course.
Otherwise.
Yeah, you might as well get signatures while everybody's
Right,
here.
right, yeah. Well, we'll say if we're here next week for the
Yeah,
meeting,
right.
that's what we do.
You can have
We do
4
it,
next week.
Right, right, we do it, just in case something goes up, right.
So you don't have the decision, so this is
So we'll date it.
That's efficiency.
done. Makes my life easier.
You need me to sign something too?
Yes, and I'll print it, it'll take me 2 seconds, I
Yep.
forgot, thank you for reminding me.
Yep.
We dated this tonight? Yeah, because it's filed with the clerk and nothing,
17,
but so
yeah.
it's gonna be 9/17/2018.
You guys spending time in hockey rinks and coaching and last Friday night. No, that's the day you do that next.
Yep.
On Saturday morning. Like, that was my ring. I think it fell off in my glove.
So, and let's have to, is your husband Dave? No.
Rick.
Rick, yeah, so we grew up in Framingham.
Oh, that's right.
He grew up in my, they went to Notre Dame, so I was like, yeah.
I knew there was some
There's
connection.
connection, and I saw it, and so and I was gonna ask you at the voting, I saw you there, and I said, oh, that's Annalise, I haven't seen her in a long time, you know, but I didn't, not that I'd said
We're a
to
little
talk.
overwhelmed with using the new technology.
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
But I didn't also, because it was in voting, I didn't want to just start a conversation, so I just, but I said, oh, I'll have to.
Yeah,
I was just looking at your thing.
So how's Paul,
I think that's not.
Paul's brother, right?
Paul's his brother, yep, he's fine.
Because
Yep.
I know they moved away from Fox,
yeah.
in Paul and Lois, right? No.
Yes, yeah,
Right there,
that's-
so they're doing well?
Yep, yep.
Good, yeah. Been a few years, so I just want to know where people.
They're in Westminster now.
They're still in this, yeah, because that's where you know, so health-wise, they're doing, yeah, nice. So there's the signage, dated, and then you can. All right, so we had an administrative item regarding to meet Edward Basile, but I don't see an Edward here.
He's not
So,
here,
okay.
so I guess we'll.
We can go on to the next one and just if he
Yeah,
shows
I'll-
the next meeting, yeah.
Sure, I'll call him and
Yeah.
follow up with him. Maybe he wasn't able to attend it.
So I did look on, I did Google him just to see, because I don't know who, you know, but it seems like he's been involved in the politics and, you know, I think he ran for some representative office or whatnot.
He
so,
did, yeah.
So,
Yep, he's been a resident for 12 years, he's a business owner.
okay,
That's basically what I know about
Okay,
him.
good.
But he had expressed interest, and so hopefully he still is interested.
yeah.
I'm-
Well, right, initially, we
Considering
didn't know
that he's
if
not
that was,
here,
because
yeah.
Brian said he had some recommended, or
I'll
maybe
reach
have
back out to
someone.
my friend too, I had someone that was interested as well.
Oh, that would be
Right,
great, they could
yeah.
reach out to me and I'll get them on the
Yeah,
agenda.
right.
There was another woman who was an attorney that was interested, but her schedule ended up changing and she's not available anymore, so we'll keep looking.
Whatever, well, we'll certainly welcome to meet someone if they come to another hearing.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on then to the administrative item of the Still River Commons 40B.
Yep, and I just, for the residents at home, I just want to be very clear that this is not deliberation over any details of the project. These are
Right.
merely administrative items
Mhm.
to assist with the future review of the project.
Right.
So the first item was, it's really just to let the board know that we've contacted Mass Housing Partnership, and under their program, they're providing technical assistance. So they've hired a consultant from Hancock Associates.
Right, so.
I believe it was someone that, Gerard, you had worked with previously or recommended. Am I wrong in saying that?
So,
It's Joseph Eznola.
yeah, so I think what we saw was there were two, Myrtle Lowy was one of the people that I think potentially was a candidate.
Yeah, you're giving me two
And
candidates.
then the other one, we looked at just based on projects that
Okay.
they did in the area.
Okay.
So, so when you contacted me about those, I, so I said, okay, one's in one entity because he was involved with mass housing.
Okay.
When we were doing our other 40Bs, I think Myrtle Lowy was on the housing commission, or I can't remember what the exact title was, but, and then the other one, it had, if I recall, local projects, so that we felt they'd be up to speed
Okay.
on knowing Bolton and whatnot. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
So Joseph is from Hancock Associates, and I'm going to find out if he's available to attend. I assume he will be available to
Mhm.
attend the first meeting, so.
Right. Okay.
And he'll be able to assist the board, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Gerard, hasn't the board used this type of assistance in the past from Mass Housing?
So, we did use a gentleman, Ed Marchant,
Okay.
that was from this, one of this list of 40B consultants.
Mhm.
Then we've used a couple,
Okay,
in the
okay.
past, on some of the larger 40Bs that we had. John Whitten on the Sunset Ridge project. That was one of the early on. So early on, we used then Judith Mitch was the peer review consultant we used on, I think, I want to say at least 3 of them. So,
Okay.
and I saw that she as well, her firm, or that firm as well as
Priestley Banker provided a proposal.
they had provided proposals. So,
So that'll be the second item to
okay,
discuss.
yeah. So,
So hopefully that will provide some assistance to the board through that process, making
now
sure
I
we're
saw in
meeting the
your
right
email
deadlines.
earlier today that said
Yeah.
the town would have to sign a contract. So does that get signed by?
It's not really, the contract is between MHP and Hancock.
Right.
It's sort of like the secondary letter, it's in the packet.
Yeah, you can see it here.
Let's see here. So the responsibilities of the municipality, keeping MHP informed of any unusual delays in the decision schedule, and notifying MHP in a timely manner of final decisions and or permit issuance. I guess that's basically what we're agreeing to by signing it.
So the board of selectmen as well as our board, we'd have to sign.
Correct, so I have that for you to sign. You can-
Oh, okay, so we
I can
could,
have you
that's
sign
something we
that
could
tonight.
take care of tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I added it, to be correctly why I added it.
Unless
so that-
someone here would.
Unless
say-
you object.
Unless people want to do something else, right, that's what I'm
Right.
saying, I don't have
Yeah.
skin in the game as far as, I just, given what we saw for history of what the people, projects have worked on, look like, Erica had, I think a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 or maybe 4 different names of people that potentially were
Right.
recommended as, options.
Right, and even if, just to be clear too, even if you request a certain consultant, doesn't mean you're gonna get that person, it
Right.
depends on their availability. So
Right.
it's really who MHP ends up
Mm.
matching you up with at the end of the day anyway.
Okay.
But they at least allow you to, give an opinion.
Right, so this is just saying, fine, this person or firm would be acceptable, and then they could come back and say, oh, that's great that
Right.
you chose that one, but we're gonna recommend someone else because of availability.
Well, no, this is who they're saying is available.
Okay, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine,
no,
yeah, right.
yeah.
You knew it was one on the list of.
And it ended up being,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think they try to accommodate the town, I'm just saying,
Okay.
if they can't, then
Right.
they'll
I
select
see,
somebody
I
else.
see, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect, then,
You sent out a fire plan?
We really can't talk any
Okay.
details of the project until the hearing.
Yeah,
This is
okay.
really just for the
Fine.
administrative.
Was that part of the filing, or was it only?
It was after the original submission, so that'll be reviewed at the hearing.
Okay, so that's fine. If you have a signature page, I can
I
sign
will,
that.
it's in my office and I'll get that for you.
And so what was the second piece?
And then the second piece is reviewing the 2 proposals for
Oh, right.
for potential
Mhm,
peer
yep.
review.
And I saw one of them, I think Judith Mitch, for like $6,500. I didn't see
Yep.
the second one, but maybe that's just.
I take it that this is a typo on the MHP letter from Susan Connolly, saying Jor lives in Saugus. 145 Nashua Road, Saugus, Mass.
What is that?
Yeah, right.
And
You've
so-
moved. You're not eligible on this board.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, well, you got a third member, Brett Handy, Brett? Brian?
Yeah,
I
that's
see.
the minute typo.
So it's a couple.
Carry over
yeah.
from my other project.
Mhm.
Copy paste.
All right, well, well, she's from the state, so, it's not like it's a reviewer, but yeah. Okay, so. So Mitch, and,
So Horsley Whitman,
right, mhm. So the Holston Whitman, just, is John Whitman, is that John Whitman's firm? Is that
I
different?
don't believe so.
Okay.
I can ask Janet Carter Bernardo, is my contact there. She's a very good civil engineer. She
Mhm.
does a lot of peer reviews for other towns. She's
Right.
actually reviewing a 40B in another community right now that's pretty large. I can ask her if John is associated with that company. When I did a Google search and looked on their website, I didn't see his name anywhere.
It's not that, I mean, just,
Well, what are we supposed to be, there's two proposals here, so what are we
Correct.
supposed to be?
Right, so looking at the two proposals and then making a decision who you would like to use as the peer reviewer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So choosing between the two?
Yes.
Between
Or if the
Mitch
board,
and-
or, you know, if the board has another, you know, company in mind that they'd like to get a proposal from, I'm happy to, you know, entertain that as well.
so, I mean, cost alone, again, because if you review the whole project, I mean, it's $2,000 less from the Wilson Green Group than, right, than the other one? 65
Correct.
versus
Right.
45.
And who are those services billed to, the town, or is it?
It's billed to the town, but it's paid
And
by the
reimbursed.
applicant.
Paid by the applicant.
So they've already paid, it's either 5,000 or 5,500 that they've already given to the town that's been put in escrow,
Right.
sitting there waiting for this peer review to be conducted. And then if it goes over that 5,000 or 5,500, I will request additional money
From
from
the
the applicant. So there's no cost to the town ever for the peer review.
However, from history with the applicants, and some will, you know, say, will assert that we're making it uneconomical to them, you know, because they're, you know, they agree to a certain, like, minimum profit, I don't know if it's minimum profit, but, you know, so.
Has that come up in the past?
It has, you know,
Okay.
that you're, you know, just as a recollection, I'd have to go back, you know, to me. But
Yeah.
there were, definitely that
Okay.
came up, it's like, wait a second, you know, you're picking the most expensive contractor or, you know, resources, and that's coming out of us, and you're making the project uneconomical, or,
Okay.
you know, potentially uneconomical,
I
so.
can't imagine that happening in this scenario,
No.
only because the development's so small. I mean, I know
Right. Mhm.
it's 8 units on
Mhm.
6 acres, I get that. It's not small in that respect, but generally speaking, we're not talking 30 units, 50, it's 8 units, so I can't imagine the scope of this service going far beyond what's already here.
So, I know just, I don't know if, has anyone been on 40B projects here? On the board yet? I can't remember. So, we've used the Judith Niche firm.
Yeah.
Multiple times, so
Mhm.
it's, so if it's not 3, it could be, I can't remember, but it's, and they do have a good resource. The 2 people we've had, I think one was.
Stephen Van Tresca is who I asked
Yeah,
the
yes.
proposal from.
Yeah, so Stephen Tresca, I think there was a Susan.
I don't think he's there anymore.
Okay,
Yeah.
but some of the people we had, but we've had very good resources.
Great.
And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they're Wesley Whitten. And they worked well with the applicant
Yeah,
through the process, you know.
Yeah.
Adversarial in nature in that, you know, there's like, they're trying to hold them, they're looking out on it for the board's and the town's behalf, but, you know, so they push back, but they also seem to come to reasonable working outcomes on things that were matters of discussion or.
I guess I'm a little concerned with the civil engineering, this one, Horsley, Whitman Group, engineering and civil engineering review and technical peer review. They seem a low ball on that, you know, as far as, this is gonna be a nasty project from a wetland standpoint, so I don't know.
So that's just a review, does that?
They present the-
ongoing- That's just their initial review, right?
I don't know, isn't that the whole
Yeah.
figure? Or is that?
well, they outlined what that amount of money would cover, so you can kind of compare line by line, you know.
Well, the other one's 6,500.
It's 6,500,
Yeah.
but if they're providing the same service, they just are charging more than, you know what I mean? Like, you have to really look at what that covers, so scope of services, so Frizzly went and is gonna provide a site visit, the review, technical peer review letters, hearing attendance, they'll attend 2 hearings, and then they'll help draft the conditions of the comprehensive permit. Niche Engineering will attend one workshop meeting with the applicant, attend one ZBA meeting, with Niche's initial review findings, perform a review of the revised plans, and prepare a follow-up report, and then just, you know, telephone, emails. Oh, continued, I'm sorry, I missed something, let's see. They'll also do a site visit. And they actually specified what their technical review covers. I wonder if Horsley went through that.
This basically it's a phase one solar review is to 6,500, right? And then,
It does look like you're getting more services out of the Horsley Witten Group.
right.
And it seems more targeted to the wetlands.
When you look at
Let's look at
two
number here.
ZBA meetings.
Which one are you looking at?
What's the difference?
Those are my
These guys
concerns,
go one.
engineering and the wetlands.
Yeah, but they have a workshop.
And these guys have,
Stormwater management's gonna be an interesting thing.
The one workshop with the applicant and applicant site.
Stormwater management is gonna-
Yeah.
ZBA representatives, is, are they saying that's a hearing, a workshop? I mean, how does,
For niche engineering?
Yeah.
No, a workshop would be a meeting with the applicant to go through their edits and make sure that they're gonna, that's how I'm taking it.
and
So I
even
would-
ZBA representatives, so it couldn't be of the whole board then?
You know, you could ask them to make that workshop a meeting instead. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think it matters whether they come here or, you know what I mean?
What I'm just thinking is if it's a workshop, is that then not a public hearing? And it's done at the applicants with our peer review and then one or two can go because we can't have a whole quorum at the.
That's
at that
how
meeting.
I'm reading
Or
that,
is it a-
yes. Because they would say ZBA meeting if it
Mhm.
were a ZBA meeting, because under line
Under
item
nine,
nine,
it says one.
it says ZBA meeting. So I take that as just a work, you know, a working session to help them, you know, go through those edits.
That would be to go through the project, or is that after? the
No, I
project?
would say that's after the first review letter is submitted.
Okay.
Because if, you know, there wouldn't really be anything to discuss
Right.
until they did that initial review.
Peer review, okay, so
Yeah.
that's sort of like the
Yeah.
working session to, okay, yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't think the board can go wrong either way. I think Niche
Yeah.
Engineering and Horsley Witten
Yeah.
are very good
Yeah.
civil engineering companies.
Yeah.
I think their scopes of work, now that I'm looking at them closer, are very similar.
So from a perspective of,
And just,
the reservation I had when it was sort of under Witten, if it's related, there was a lot of time spent on the Sunset Ridge project.
Mhm.
Now, both parties are advocating on our behalf, but the lines said at that time, maybe because it was 40B, it was sort of more new as far as projects, but everything was really adversarial with John in that, you know, like,
Yeah.
it was, you know, basically the goal is to just deny a permit versus, you know, let's, you know, so somebody couldn't even have constructive piece, it was just so, you know.
Yeah, we obviously do not want that.
And we want to
We
work
want-
with, we want people that are gonna work through the process
Right.
to get either the best result or either to get permanent or not, you know.
So I honestly don't know. I can find out if Horsley Witten is associated with that company. What I can say is I've worked directly with Janet Carter,
Yeah, right.
Bernarder, for
Uh-huh,
many
yeah,
years,
right.
and I think she's a very good
So
engineer, and
that's
she's
good
not
to-
that way at
yeah, right.
all.
So that's good, so that.
And she would be the one that you'd be working with.
And that reinforced to me that maybe
Yeah.
it's different, or it's, the relation may be even change such that, you know, yeah, it's, you know, that just a point in time where it was, that role was to sort of be adversarial and, you know, turned down, because that, it really didn't do us very well for.
Yeah.
I mean, initially,
Right.
the permit got denied, and we went to court, and then it got
You don't
back to
wanna
us.
go
And
through that,
and at the end of the
yeah.
day, we learned a lesson that, you know, we really have to work collaboratively in the process. Doesn't mean we can't, on our behalf of the town, say, you know, we're gonna cut it down, or we're gonna condition it, you know, but just even get to that point was, you know, taking the land court would uphold that in our favor, you know, it's like right back to town and,
Right.
so.
One other thing, I do know that Janet sits on her Conservation Commission in Needham, so that's another positive if we're looking at this project from a wetland standpoint. She does have that experience. But that's, Stephen Ventressa may have that experience as well, I don't know. So again, I don't think you can go wrong. Both companies are very good, so.
And to the
And
extent.
I'll find out the question about John Whitten.
There's no Witten listed on the.
Right,
on
not,
the rate
not
schedule.
resources,
On
right,
the
so,
rate
right,
schedule.
so I think we're probably fine.
There's Horsley's a winner, but no Whitten. I looked on the website, I couldn't see it in front of me.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah.
I know that Richard Clayton is their president, CEO. He, that's the only name I've ever known, that runs that company.
I mean, if we think we're gonna get a quality product from either.
I think they're
or
both great,
right,
so it's
that's what I'm
really,
saying.
it's up to the board how you feel.
So, to that point of like the cost on the project, then, I mean, the applicant would probably certainly wanna object to that if we said, these were the two, and one was more expensive, we think we're gonna get a good result from either, so we're with the lower cost on the project, I mean, we don't have to just spend money for the sake of spending it,
But you also have a rapport
Mhm.
with Niche Engineering, you feel comfortable with them, so I don't wanna persuade the board in any direction, but
No, I get
I
that.
just wanted to
but-
provide options,
Right,
so.
and so I've had a good relationship with, but we have 4 of the board members that haven't had any relationship with them, but also, you've.
I've worked with Stephen on the closing
Yeah,
of Sunset
right,
Ridge, and I
right.
thought he was excellent too,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
like
so-
I said, both.
So,
Yeah.
but if we've had good result with that, but also you've had good result with the people down in Sutherland, I'm saying.
Yeah, well, Horsley Wetton also, I just wanted to mention too, they've worked with Bolton's Conservation Commission. Janet did a couple of reviews for them when Carol Gummer was
Carol
here.
Gummer was here, yeah,
So, just
Right, again.
And she's the one that's on the Conservation Commission in what town?
in Needham.
Needham.
Yeah.
So,
You also said there's 5,500 that's been paid up front.
it's either, I apologize, it's either 5,000 or 5,500.
But
yeah.
in other words, in any event, there'd be no reimbursement until after the project's done, and it wouldn't
Oh.
say, oh, we're picking 4,500, so that you can.
No, right, it's done.
No, that money would be in that account until the comprehensive permit is issued, and then at that point, whether we roll that over to allow for construction oversight, or we give it back to them, we can make that
Okay.
decision then, but no, that would stay, we would not be giving that money up.
Right.
Because they could very well come back and need to do one more review, and so give us another proposal to do that, so, and that could eat up the rest of the money.
Right.
And so in the past, how have we found niche engineering to be on, as far as their projections of, if they usually come in at 6,500,
That I don't
does
know.
it go way
I
over?
don't recall that they went way over, right, I think that, depending on the project, like Sunset Ridge, I think because if I recall, it was like the applicant was slow in sort of getting things done, and there were residents, that they had to go back more than,
Yeah.
maybe not in an efficient manner, so that, I think, led to more costs, because then they'd have to go back that steep, but I think overall, initially, when he said, okay, these are the findings, it was well organized and, was within the budget, but I think conditions may have led to sometimes some extra costs, but I don't mean that they're out there to lowball and then to whack,
I mean, the one thing that wasn't listed in the Horsley Witten Group proposal was that working session with the applicant, so that actually might be useful. So if the board, chooses Horsley Witten, that may be something that you would want them to add to their scope of services. to make it more of an efficient process. Or maybe not, maybe you're happy with them just attending the meetings. Sometimes it can be helpful for the applicant to sit down with the peer reviewer and to go through, you know, line item by line on what they need to do.
Well, it does say something in here about a peer review,
Did I miss that?
but it doesn't list it in the.
Deliverables, initial peer review letter of recommendations, plan revisions, regulatory
Yeah,
compliance.
that's their peer review, so that's looking at the application, saying, okay, these are,
Okay.
you know, what do they think to.
Right, because that's task 3, the technical.
Versus the
peer
working
review letters.
session was, once we got all the inputs from the boards and from the peer reviews, and then had to look at crafting a decision on what variances to grant relief on and things like that, you know, then they did a peer review to walk through a draft, so decision. In one of them was the attorney representing the applicant that pulled together a draft decision, and the working session went through, you know, to say, okay, wait, you know, versus the town putting together a decision, so with the onus on them. But the peer review was helpful like that, to have that working session for
Okay, because it does say, now that I'm reading their, that section of their proposal under task 4, it says, at the request of the ZBA, HW, you know, can be available to attend working meetings with the applicant and town staff to review comments and recommendations. And it can be, you know, those services can be, the fee for that can be calculated based on standard rates and agreed upon in advance with the ZBA.
So at that point, then you almost, you could have a competitive 55 or 6,500, you know, depending on how many attorneys, so, I mean, how many representatives they had, not attorneys for that peer review, so.
So, you know, realistically, that 4,500, if that was something you wanted them to attend, you know, let's say it's 5,000.
Could we ask them to factor in?
Yeah, we could
the
ask them
working
to
session
revise it,
and
yeah.
revise it, and then we could see if it's,
Yeah.
if they come back and it's still less, then maybe it's prudent to go with them. If it comes back and it's.
And you're also getting 2 ZBA meetings
Mhm.
out of that as well,
Right.
which is, you know,
Mhm.
not the same with it.
Yeah,
but-
because I would anticipate home occupation review took 3. I mean, here we have I would envision we'll need a site walk. We'll have, even though they have picture, you know, whatever, you just can't, you know, the visual sometimes is.
So, yeah, I guess that's another point that you're kind of getting at. Do you want the peer reviewer signed up prior? Because that's what I was thinking, to be most efficient, do we want this company hired and present at that first meeting, even though they haven't done the review, but maybe that isn't efficient, I don't know.
I think they'd like to go out. I mean, if we're gonna have them look at.
They definitely need to do a
the
site
plans,
visit,
they need to
yeah.
get a site visit.
Yeah.
You know, and that'd be part of our, what we want, you know, so I can just envision it's gonna be more than 2 hearings anyway. So whatever costs on both, if they're looking at 1 to 2 meetings, it's maybe unrealistic thing, it's only 1 to 2 meetings, you know? And then we'd be able to craft a decision, you know,
Yeah, actually, we probably don't want them to be at that first meeting, because we would only want them present once they've done their initial review.
Yeah.
That would be most cost efficient, you wouldn't want them there
No.
just to hear testimony.
Have to see what they've got first, and then we can bring them in. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, considering that site, I'm less worried about the money of it than I am about like a specific expertise. I like that that they work with the, you know, wetland stuff and all of that, because, I mean, this is a 40B. So the developers have more leeway with what they're gonna comply with. So if we have somebody who
Or what they're not
specifically
gonna
looks
comply
at
with,
that,
right.
that it's not, they're not gonna build something that, the first big rain, it just washes into, you know, Bolton Flats.
They can't play with public safety and health, so
Yeah,
that much you get.
right,
But
yeah.
the rest of it's up for grabs.
Yeah.
Without making the project uneconomic, so that's,
Right.
you'll see.
Well, you know.
We have that.
But things like driveway slopes, I mean,
Yeah.
these are things that
Mhm.
can impact
Yeah,
health and safety.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So does the board want to, so I should get a revised proposal from Horsley Witten, and then you'll make a decision at your next meeting? Is that what you want to
If
do?
they can have it in by then, yeah.
Oh, I assume it's just adding one meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay. We'll do it.
we meeting at the Houghton Building?
We are. I wanted to have more room for audience members.
Yeah. I would think that we get hopefully good residents in the area to look at that. I'm interested to see what that, because will we get people from Harvard? I mean,
Potentially.
Potentially, and procedurally, can we take their input if it's just the town of Bolton? Because I saw on something that, whether it be fire or something, was serviced by town of Harvard, just.
Yeah, I'll
again, not
find that.
looking-
I assume you can take public comment from someone that was in Harvard, but I'll verify. I had to notify them as an abutter, so.
Okay, so they are right, Bolton or Harvard.
Yeah, that could be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, because we had that with some property, what was down in Stowe? What was it?
Oh, remember the swamp?
Something was in Parkley.
Woobly, on Woobly Road?
Woobly Road, yeah, that
Yeah.
one, remember that?
Yeah,
That
was
a
it
win.
teal?
It still
Was it
hasn't been
teal?
done, he still hasn't done
Oh,
anything
no,
with
right,
it,
'cause
Stowe
they-
slammed the door.
Yeah.
Stowe, right, so saw it, and then
Oh, yes,
breaks
that
on
property.
more than that, but I just.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that guy came,
Yeah.
you know, my history on the planning board was this is about the third trip for that piece of land. You know, it went through the planning board a couple of times, and then it just, conservation just, jumped all over it. And, it's just.
So is it the good news that all of site is on Bolton property? You said there's a butters, so is all the site of the?
All of the development is in
Is in
Bolton,
Bolton.
but the property itself expands
Right, yeah, into Harvard.
into Harvard.
Harvard.
So they were within 300 feet, the abutters were notified, which included Harvard.
One of those deals, yeah. So Harvard will have their own hearings, I would imagine.
I don't think so, because all of the development's in Bolton.
Bolton, yeah.
Yeah.
But if it impacts the wetlands in Harvard,
They may have-
I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe
right.
they had to go to their conservation
That's what I
commission,
mean,
but
yeah, so-
I'm not sure about that, that might have.
We certainly don't have to solicit any, we, as part of 40B, we have to solicit input from all our boards because everything's coordinated through the ZBA on the 40B, so, but I don't think we have any
No, I mean, that.
requirement to solicit anything from the Harvard boards.
Right, Harvard was
Yeah.
notified, just the town itself was notified of the project, so they certainly know about it,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Right. So they could come, someone, a representative could come in and make a point at a hearing, but we're not required to go out
I
and
don't think
solicit
so.
anything from that town just because of the proximity.
And maybe the MHP consultant, maybe he'll come in and say, you know, I would recommend that you do that, I don't know, so.
Right.
Motion to close, and then I'll get you that paper. to
Like I
sign.
said, do you have that signature?
Do you want me to do that before we close, or adjourn?
No, we can do that after, so I don't want to hold them up just
Okay.
for me to
I
sign.
think that's
So all administrative agenda items having been met, we'll motion to adjourn today's hearing.
so moved.
Second by Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.